Good morning, Turks and Caicos, and welcome to a special edition of the Patriot Hour. And I am your host, Jamal Robinson, with a very special guest in studio today, Dr. Umar Johnson, the Pan-Africanist, the psychologist, the Avery black man. So we're going to have a great show. It's an hour, and we'll get right to it. Dr. Umar, tell us a little bit about yourself. So who is Dr. Umar Johnson?
Certainly. I'm a doctor of clinical psychology, certified school psychologist. I'm also an educator, certified school principal, former school administrator, also trained as a political scientist, and also a psychoacademic Holocaust, special education, and ADHD wars against black boys. I actually shipped several boxes of the books here. They did not make it. They'll probably get here late, so I asked Miss Carolyn Dickinson to go ahead and make them available to the people rather than send them back to me. I am founder of the National Independent Black Parent Association, an international organization to organize black parents so they can fight against racism in the schools, special education, discipline, policy, finance, homeschooling, parent support, parent advocacy. I'm also founder of the Unapologetically African Black College and Consciousness Tour, which I had shared with a lot of the brothers and sisters here on the island in case they have sons or daughters between the ages of 11 and 17 that would like to come to the States and participate in the 2017 tour, which will take place the first 2 weeks in July. Former Minister of Education of Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association, and currently on a crusade to build the world's first residential academy for black boys that will be based on the principles of revolutionary Pan-African nationalism and international economics.
Okay, explain what a Pan-Africanist is and why are you one?
Certainly. Pan-Africanism is the black man's oldest formal political ideology. Its roots are often traced back to the Haitian Revolution of 1791, but actually Pan-Africanism is as old as Africa. We've always had cultural Pan-Africanism, but not until around the time of the Haitian Revolution do we get political Pan-Africanism. If I were to sum it up in 4 simple points, I would say the first principle of Pan-Africanism is that we are all members of the same African family. Whether we are in Turks and Caicos speaking English, whether we are in South Africa speaking Xhosa, whether we are in Kenya speaking Swahili, whether we're in Brooklyn, New York speaking English, or whether we're up in Toronto, Canada speaking French, no matter what our religion is, no matter what our skin color is, no matter what our language or professed culture is, we are all members of the same family. So that's key. African family first is the foundation of revolutionary Pan-African nationalism. The second point is that we identify as being African first. Being African is our central identity. It is our most important identity. Being African is our most critical political identity. We believe that we should put being African first in all of our affairs, just like white people put white being first. That's why white people are currently the most powerful race on the planet, and that's why Chinese are poised to overtake white folk as the most powerful race on the planet, because they also identify as Chinese first. The reason Africans are dead last politically and economically all around the world, all 7 continents, is we do not put our Africanity first. We put our religion first. We put our professional organizations first. We put our status first. We put our national identity first. We are Africans, and we should identify as being African because God made us black. God made us African. Everything else, we only became that by choice or by circumstance, not by nature. The third principle is African self-determination. That means that we as African people have to work together cooperatively, internationally, not just locally. We have to work together to solve our own problems without any interference from any other race. This is very valid when you look at the political, economic conditions of the Caribbean as well. I argue, as do many scholars and economists, that one of Africa's biggest problems and one of the Caribbean's biggest problems is our over-reliance on European aid, our over-reliance on Chinese aid. We borrow thinking that it helps, but it actually hurts, because all they're doing is giving out donations, but they're not building the infrastructure. Teach a man how to fish, he can eat for the rest of his life. You give him a fish, he can only eat for that meal. So we believe in self-determination. No outside interference in the political and economic struggles of black people. No one can be more concerned and committed to us than we can. Any other people that tells us that they're committed to African redemption is being dishonest, because every other race needs Africa, and the Caribbean for that matter, economic climate, so that we are powerless, which allows them to come in, dominate the land, dominate the resources, and pay us pennies for resources that are worth millions of dollars. And it's more than four, but for the sake of time, just four. We argue that as Africa's destiny is tied up with the destiny of Marcus Garvey said that Chinese are strong in Canada, Chinese are respected in America, are respected in the Caribbean. The same thing is true for the European Jew. The same thing is true for the Anglo-Saxon. Black people are disrespected, ignored everywhere we live, even in countries where we are the dominant, such as in Turks and Caicos, Jamaica, Haiti, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa. Even when we are in the majority, we are still ignored and treated as a secondary issue in the lands of our birth, because Africa is not strong. In order to be powerful, you have to have a powerful international homeland. Chinese have that, British have that, Indians have that. We don't have that. So brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, America, Canada, the UK, Asia, Australia, Central and South America need to understand that as we fight our local fight, we cannot lose sight of the international fight, and that is to redeem Mother Africa. So Mother Africa.
Well, I know you all you're glad you waited around to get this thing started, because that was a good kickoff on what Pan-Africanist is. And the number to call is 244-1789. That's 244-1 on the Patriot Hour. That's very, very special edition. So, Dr. Johnson,
yes,
explain shapes character and personality.
Discipline is critical. Discipline is absolutely critical, because we are bombarded with the every day. It is very important, not only for our children, but for ourselves as adult Africans, to make sure that we understand our purpose in life, and that we develop the self-mastery, the self-control, and the self-discipline necessary to work our plans. A lot of people are born with talent. A lot of people are born with intelligence and skills, but they don't have the self-mastery that is necessary to develop that. Only through sustained focus can we make of ourselves what our ancestors sent us here to become. And when we look at the condition of African people, it's going to require more discipline. And when we speak of discipline, one of the greatest disciplinary weaknesses of African people is our economic behavior. We are very dysfunctional financially. Right now, this is one of the most pitiful times of the African year, because all over the world, from Mama Africa to Turks to Haiti to Brazil to New York, Philly, Los Angeles, Montreal, Toronto, to London, Manchester, Wolverhampton, Holland, Austria, and I'm naming all the places I've been around the world, African people are getting ready to spend, in many cases, more than 50% of their annual disposable income for the year on Christmas gifts. Christmas gifts. Someone is going to have to explain to me how a love for your Savior, Jesus Christ, who was not a materialistic man, who did not in any way, shape, or form worship materialism, how does his memory, how does a celebration in his honor gets manipulated, sabotaged, opted into a spending spree for Western capitalism? In Philadelphia, we're about to spend $3 billion from the day after Thanksgiving until the day of Christmas. So basically 4 weeks, November the 26th to December the 25th, black people in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania will spend $3 billion. In New York City, that amount will be as high as $50 billion. Here in Turks and Caicos, sure, several $million. In South Africa, you're going to look at least a $50 million spending spree. How can we afford to take our money and waste it on Christmas celebrating a man who had nothing to do with expensive gifts when we don't have schools, we don't have hospitals, we don't have airlines, we don't have shipping companies? The African race is the only race that doesn't produce an automobile. We're the only race without an international distribution process and system. Chinese have distribution, Indians have distribution, Europeans have distribution. We're the only race without distribution. Okay, where are our factories to put our children and our men and our women to work? Do we manufacture our own clothes? No. And many can even grow our own food. We don't even sell our own cell phones. We don't control any internet, which is one of the biggest businesses on the planet. We need investment, and we need to invest in ourselves. How do we rebuild the condition of African people when we're steadily focused on wasting our money on useless gifts that have been advertised before us by European capitalism? Economic discipline. Without that, we will never improve ourselves, because in order to be politically strong, in order to be a political power, you have to be an economic power. There's no such thing as being a political power without being an economic power. So we can vote, and you guys got elections coming up, and that's all fine and well. But guess what? You can vote from now for the next million years, and the conditions of black folks in Turks and Caicos will not change. In South Africa, they've been voting since 1994. In the United States of America, we've been voting since 1865, when that racist Abraham Lincoln allegedly freed the slaves, although it was the slaves who really freed him. 150 years, black people been voting in America, and we still don't own any measurable percentage of America's wealth. Until you get your money together, your politics will never be yours. Any people that keeps themselves economically devastated will never be taken seriously by other folks.
So what's the difference between a dream and a goal?
The difference between a dream and a goal: a dream is something you wish to have. It's something you aspire to become. It's something you would want to do. It is your mental vision. That's a dream. But a goal has a plan. A goal has a measurable plan. A goal can tell you where you're going to be in the next 3 months with this plan, where you're going to be in the next 6 months, where you're going to be in the next 2 years, the next 5 years. The difference between a dream and a goal is the goal is simply the vision. It's the outcome. It's the final result. The dream is the vision, the outcome, the final result. But the goal is when you take that dream and take that vision and you break it down into measurable steps that allows you to slowly but surely achieve that dream.
And what's the difference between a job and a career?
With a job is something you do. You simply go to it to work. You get paid for your time on the job. That's a job. You simply get paid or reimbursed for your labor. That is it. You are not expected to use your intelligence. You are not expected to use your experience. No one really cares about your opinion about what you do. I'm simply paying you to do what I told you to do. You go through the same motion, 7 hours a day, 40 hours a week. That's a job. It tends to be very boring and unfulfilling. A career is the exact opposite. A career is very fulfilling. A career has a place for you to impact your work through your intelligence. They want you to use your mind. They want you to use your experience. They want to know what you think. When you have a career, you don't get paid for being there. You get paid for the expertise you bring. When you have a career, you don't get dock pay when you call out. When you have a career, you'll still get paid the amount of money that you were originally promised to be paid, because you're not paid for time on the job. You're paid for the quality of your product. And that's why we want our young boys and girls to get a good education. We want them to get a decent trade school or business entrepreneurial education so that they can have careers instead of jobs, because the two most important predictors of human happiness, the two greatest correlates of human satisfaction, is number one, do you love what you do for a living? Do you love your spouse? Do you love your wife? Do you love what your career, what you do for a living? The second predictor of happiness is, do you love who you spending your life with? That's your spouse, that's your husband, that's your king, that's your queen, that's your mate. If you are happily married and have a fulfilling career, you're a person. If you are happily married and have an unfulfilled career, you may suffer from some unfulfilled ambitions and insecurities in your life. Sometimes you'll feel happy, sometimes you won't. If you love your career and hate who you come home to, meaning you're dissatisfied with your personal romantic relationship, once again, you can feel a sense of emptiness. In order for us to be whole, see, we talk about being holy. Being holy simply means becoming whole in all aspects of your life. The reason Jesus Christ was holy, Abraham, Moses, Muhammad, Noah, they were holy. Buddha, Krishna, they were holy because they were fulfilled every aspect of their life. Life was complete. And in order to be holy, you got to love what you do for a living, and you got to love who you come home to.
Can you explain the 4 reasons why reading is key?
Number 1, the main reason why we need our young people to read, adults for that matter as well, because our literacy rates, what we find across the African world is the literacy rates for adult Africans has not improved much since slavery. In fact, we have cases on this where the illiteracy rate of African people is almost slim to non-existent. So number 1, the first purpose of reading is to improve your vocabulary, to improve your diction and your vernacular, so that you can be more effective in communicating with the spoken word. Number 2, okay, reading improves your ability to actually communicate with the spoken word. Good readers have more vocabulary, number 1, which allows them to become more effective at communicating their ideas. Number 2, it doesn't matter how intelligent you are if you cannot reduce your ideas into the words that are necessary to explain to other people exactly what you mean. Number 3, we improve our ability to communicate with the ink pen. If you look at, regardless of race, but especially amongst African people, if you look at literature today, it is not of the same quality of literature 100 years ago. The internet, the advent of social networking, and the text message language has eroded the quality of literature. And schools are supporting this, because in many schools across the world, they no longer teach literature. They no longer teach cursive writing. They no longer teach the effective communication or the pencil. And so as a result, our children in today's world do not value the written word. They do not value books as much as we did. Once upon a time, books were the education. You used books not only for pleasure, but to learn, not only to learn, but for pleasure. But now with cell phones and video games and tablets and iPods, the respect that we as African people and our children have for literature is not the same type of respect we once had. Remember, we gave the world its first scripts, okay, the Ethiopian script. You had scripts coming out of the Sudan, the Sudanic script. The first scripts ever used in the world were created by Africans. So literature was always a piece of who we are. We were not only an oral people, we were also a very literate people. And the 4th reason for reading is it improves your knowledge of general facts and information. It teaches you about the world. You become more knowledgeable to the extent that you read. So I want all my parents here in Turks and Caicos and those listening on the internet around the world, it is very important that you turn off the television for at least 1 hour a day. You should be engaged in sustained silent reading. And I want to underline sustained. That means it does not get interrupted by text messages. It does not get interrupted by TV and radio distraction. It must be sustained. This is how you teach mental discipline. We can improve discipline just by seeing to it that our children sit down with a book every night. Reading should be done every night. That's how important education is. And for 1 hour, there should be a quiet hour in every home in the African world where our children are simply engaged in a conversation with the author of that book.
When you tell kids to be excellent, be an owner, be a boss, what do you mean?
I mean that I find too many African children do not value education globally. And the reason why we don't value it is twofold. Number 1, our children have been a steady diet of entertainment and athletics, even by their parents. We have the worship of talent as opposed to the worship of scholarship, a worship of physical, athletic as well as entertainment-based talents. It is nothing wrong with that. We have a right brain and we have a left brain. Part of our brain's anatomy is engineered by God to deal with the logical reasoning issues that we need to face in our everyday life. But the other side of our brain needs to be dedicated to those artistic things. Okay, but when your whole life is only based on athletics and entertainment, then you lose out on the other aspects of life, and you also lose the reality that most of our children will not be able to live comfortably as athletes and as entertainers. Only 1% of all high school athletes and entertainers, for that matter, will ever become professional, will ever be able to make enough money to live comfortably off of that type of a lifestyle. So we don't want all the children in North Caicos and South Caicos and Grand Turk and here in Provo thinking that I don't have to take school seriously because I'm going to be a superstar football player, I'm going to be a superstar basketball singer or a rapper or an actor. That is not realistic. In order to be successful with athletics and entertainment, it takes a degree of luck. You have to be in the right place at the right time. Talent is not enough. But if you decide that you want to be a business owner, if you decide you want to be a doctor, if you decide you want to be a lawyer, an educator, no luck is involved. I decided I wanted to be a psychologist around the age of 9 in the 3rd grade. I didn't need any luck. All I needed was hard work, dedication, discipline, perseverance, consistency. There is no luck required to become a success in life, but you need a goal and you need a plan to achieve that goal. But when you talk about becoming an athlete and an entertainer, I know a lot of athletes and entertainers. I know some of the very best in the world personally. Okay, and even they will tell you, as great as I am, there were people who were better who never got it, because you do need a piece of luck. So we don't want our children's future being based on luck. We want to be based on a solid program of personal progress.
As you mentioned before, it's clear we're in season here in the TCI, and everybody and their dog are talking about building a technical school.
Yes.
Tell us why a technical or trade school is important.
In America, after Dr. was assassinated, April 4th, 1968, the federal government had a meeting, and they wanted to find out how the black power in black civil rights movement, how it had been able to grow to a level that almost threatened internal national security. The 60s was a decade of intense conflict between the black underclass and the white overclass. You had to deal with the Nation of Islam, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, CORE, NAACP, Urban League, the Marcus Garvey Movement, the Black Panthers, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Huey P. Newton, H. Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael, Malcolm X, Dr. King, and the list, Medgar Evers, the list goes on and on. America said, we never want to go through this again. How were they able to sustain this struggle as long as they did? And the answer was, it was through the independent tradesmen and women in the black community who were able to finance the civil rights and black power movements. They were not financed by the government. They were not financed by white philanthropy. To some extent they were, but not consistently through government. Decided that we're going to kill black power by killing the independent black laborer, the tradesman and the tradeswoman. They went into the high schools of America, and you can do the research on this, and they start shutting down all the industrial building trade programs. Up until 1970, a black man or woman in America did not have to go to college to earn a decent living. They could become an electrician in high school, plumber in high school, carpenter in high school, barber in high school, computer networker, high school, woodworker, high school, chef, high school, auto mechanic, high school. They could learn these things in high school. Expert welders, high school. After 1970, they couldn't, because the government took out all the trade programs to do what? Deindustrialize and economically devastate the black community. And as they started selling us a propaganda campaign that all black kids need to go to college, that college was the future of black America. College is the future of black Canada. College is the future of blacks in the UK and even in Africa. They told oppressed blacks that if you want to catch people, send your kids to college, and if they get an education, they can catch up. Nothing could be further from the truth. College puts you in debt. In America, we have over 2 million African Americans with master's and doctorate degrees who cannot find work. And most of us who do have college degrees, who do have a job, do not work in the field in which they studied during college. Am I saying that the children of Turks and Caicos should not go to college? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the parents of Turks and Caicos needs to sit down with their children and have a serious conversation about whether or not college is in the financial best interest of the family and of the child. Is putting your child into debt to get a 4-year degree in the long-term best interest of your child? Because guess what? A college degree does not equal work. And what a lot of black people are facing is this new type of racism where they're being told that they are overqualified for jobs. First, you're told that you're underqualified because you don't have the degree. You go back to college and you get the degree, you're underqualified. This is what I'm hearing from brothers from Canada, brothers and sisters from the UK, right here, America, even right here in Turks and Caicos. In fact, I've had at least 3 conversations since I've been here in Turks and Caicos with brothers and sisters who have told me that getting their college education made it more difficult for them to get an education, to get a job. I've been told this. I was the kid for the Garvey movement, the Marcus Garvey celebration, Ocho Rios, this past August 21st. Shout out to Jamaica too. I was told it when I was in Bermuda. Okay? So we got to realize that a game is being played. I believe, take out belief, I know for a fact that the white banks of this world, largely based out of America and the UK, have a plan to put every African child in long-term debt, economics, through the disguise of higher education. What we need to do, and what those who are running for political office need, lived here. I'm not voting for nobody unless they have a plan of industrial educational facilities for the children of Turks and Caicos. We need plumbers, we need carpenters, we need auto mechanics, we need technically skilled black men and women. Because when you do not have a technical class, we need a technical class, not just a scholarly class. We need a technical class, because if y'all do not build the technical class, guess what the government in Turks and Caicos will need to do when it comes time to build new buildings? Guess what they're going to need to do when it comes time to lay the highways? They're going to have to go to China, UK, okay? And they're going to have to import tradesmen and women to build the infrastructure of your country, because we're not preparing our own children to do that. Marcus Garvey said we cannot beg for our place. We cannot demand our place. We have to make our place. If all we're going to do is send our kids to college so they can study history and study art and study philosophy and study all these liberal art skills and talent, what use do they have to the practical progression of this country? We can't just have a bunch of ideologues with no practical skill. If it were up to me, every boy and girl before they go to college, every black boy and girl on the face of the earth before they go to college would have to go to a trade school. Why? Because getting that college degree will not get you a job. But if you know how to use your hands, if you know how to fix cars, your family will always eat. You're an expert seaman, a merchant seaman, your family will always eat. Those who can use their hands have always been able to care for their families. But those who can only think within a scholarly academic that has no practical usefulness for the community, they are always at risk for unemployment.
Okay, what is the importance of men fasting at least once a week?
Health. The black man's health is a big issue. I was in Lesotho about 3-4 weeks ago. I do an annual speaking tour in South Africa, which takes me all over the country, Johannesburg and Soweto. I love Soweto and Eastern Cape and Pretoria and all over. And so Lesotho is an independent country which is right inside of South Africa. And so in Lesotho, I learned the disturbing news that our brothers and sisters in that country have a life expectancy that is less than 40 years old. In America, the life expectancy of black men is about 10 to 15 years less than it is for white men. And when you factor in police genocide and black on black fratricide, it's even lower than that. Black men have to do a better job of caring for their bodies. We do not exercise enough. We do not eat the right foods. And one of the biggest issues I see about the health of black men is, number one, mental health, depression. A lot of black men are dealing with depression, the stress of not being able to care for their families, the stress of not being able to find a job, the stress of dysfunctionality from their own early childhood that has never been addressed, verbal abuse, fatherlessness, sexual abuse, so forth and so on. And the same is true for sisters also. So mental health is a big issue. When that mental health is not right, it automatically affects the body, because the body and the mind are not separate. They are one. Everyone knows that when you get scared, there's a physical response in your body. Okay, when you are unhappy, there's a physical response in your body. So the body and the mind are one. And black men need to stop self-medicating through alcohol. We have alcoholism all across the African world. We have too much cigarette smoking, lung cancer all across the African world. Prostate cancer is a big issue. Black men are going to have to pull back on the meat, because the way in which the meat is being cured and raised and prepared is not healthy. I actually all meat except fish and seafood New Year's Day, and ultimately we may even have to give up the seafood unless we can guarantee that the seafood is being raised in a healthy environment. It's not the food itself, it's the way in which it's being raised. Western capitalism, they have to meet the demands of people who love meat. So what they do, they pump the chickens and pump the cows, pump the turkeys full of chemicals with no regard to their effect on people's human condition. It's no coincidence that heart disease is the leading killer in America because of these chemicals and the way that we eat. Prostate cancer, black men need to stay away from green food dye. Black men need to stay away from red food dye. Black men need to pull back on having sexual intercourse as they get older, unless they are healthy. If you are healthy, sexual intercourse can be a healthy form of exercise. If you are unhealthy, sexual intercourse puts a strain on the body. And of course, we have an overabundance of black men relying on Viagra in order to achieve erection, which should not be the case if they were healthy. The problem is the blood flow. The blood pressure, is down, or up rather, because your arteries are clogged up with cholesterol and all types of unnecessary fatty acids. So what we have to do is start exercising more and put that Viagra to the side, because if you're out of shape and you take Viagra, that's like taking a car that you have in 50 years. The car hasn't been driven in 50 years, and you're going to put that car on the highway at 250 miles an hour. You can't do that. That engine cannot sustain it. The engine has been out of action for 50 years. You cannot take it from 0 to 250. And that's exactly what happens when black men who are out of shape have sex. We put an enormous amount of stress on our heart. And there's a relationship between sex and depression, because the more depressed men are, the more they try to escape their problems through sex. So having sex can actually become a drug in our community.
That's deep. Given that the TCI is a British overseas territory, as a people, what do we have to do from a psychological standpoint to prepare ourselves for political and economic independence?
Well, as I always teach, before there can be any other type of revolution, before there can be an economic revolution, a political revolution, before there can be a cultural revolution, before there can be a revolution of the black family, before there can be a military revolution even, before there's any revolution, there must first be a psychological revolution. Everything in the world. We have cell phones now because somebody thought it up. We have ships now because somebody thought it up. We have boats, airplanes, helicopters, bombs. Somebody thought it up. The solutions of African people have to be thought up. The problem is most of us do not believe. Keep in mind, psychologically speaking, all thoughts are nothing more than the branches that stem from the root of core beliefs. The problem with African people is many of us still have the same core beliefs we had during slavery. A core belief that we cannot exist without white people. A core belief that we need white maternalism and white paternalism to always look out. Belief that white people have all the answers and we can't solve our own problems without them. So until you change that mindset, you change nothing. The reason why Turks and Caicos and Bermuda and many other islands still are not independent is because they don't believe that they can make it without the white man. Period, point blank, in the story. The reason why Black America is still not economically independent within the framework of the United States is because we don't believe we can make it without white folks. We have to understand that slavery was a process of not only dehumanization, it was a process of social engineering. We were taught, ritualistically indoctrinated through ritual, daily practice. into the belief that we are not intelligent and that we cannot exist without the good graces of white folk. We were taught this every day for 400 years. That mindset, that conditioned response, that set of core beliefs is still buried deep within the psyche of every black person. Every last one of us, from Turks and Caicos to Toronto, from Los Angeles to Lesotho, from Nigeria to North Carolina, every last one of us are still suffering the debilitating psychological effects of the Great Ma'afa, the psychological residuals of slavery. Modern day Willie Lynch, post-traumatic slavery disease. The way you fix this is by starting with the children. One of our great Pan-Africanist scholar warriors, who's now an ancestor, Dr. John Henry Clark, who was a mentor of Malcolm X, he said that we're going to need a sacrificial generation of African children to pull ourselves out of this. By sacrificial, we don't mean they have to sacrifice their life. We mean that they have to sacrifice their laziness, and they have to sacrifice personal ambition for the greater good of the race. In other words, we need 20 years of revolutionary Pan-Africanist education in Turks and Caicos. We need 20 years of African children being taught self-determination, 20 years of being taught African pie, 20 years of no white Jesus, 20 years of no white worship. We need that because we're going to have to get out of this by reconditioning the mind of the children. This is specifically why I'm working to build the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. People say, why he want to build a school? With all the across the world, why does he want to settle for a school? They consider it to be somewhat short-sighted because they don't understand military science. They don't understand political science. They don't understand the history of human consciousness, and they don't understand post-traumatic slavery disease. I have to change the thinking of African children so they do not think like their parents, because all of us are psychological slaves to Europe, psychological slaves to America. Why is it that so many black women have their hair permed? Why do so many black women have relaxer in their hair? Not only in Turks and Caicos, all throughout America, even in Africa. Why do black women spend so much money trying to look like white women? Because they've been conditioned that they are ugly and unattractive. Why do black men, after we get an education, disproportionately marry outside of our race? Why do we have this crazy addiction to white women? Because of self-hatred. If you want to change that, you have to take a generation of African children and make them unapologetically African. Make them hardcore revolutionary Pan-African nationalists. And that doesn't mean they have to hate anyone at all, but they have to be loyal to themselves. Because if we don't learn how to solve our own problems by ourselves like China did. Remember now, 80 years ago, China was a laughing stock of the world. Over 100 years ago, British were slaves to the Germans. East Indians were never even considered in world affairs. Look at the UK now. Can you believe that used to be a slave nation? Can you believe that the UK used to be an ignored country? Can you believe that the Chinese were once ignored? Look at them now. So what people have done before, people can do again, but we got to get started with the babies. Frederick Douglass, my ancestor, said, it is better to build strong children than to repair. It is better to build strong children than to repair broken men. Why did he say that? Because once the mind has been corrupted with self-hate, once the mind has been corrupted with Jesus, once the mind has been corrupted that white people are better than you, more intelligent than you, it is difficult to unroot those seeds from the soil of the subconscious, which is why we have to do a better job of protecting our babies' minds from information that is psychologically debilitating, psychologically deprivating, and psychologically alienating. If it ain't positive, if it ain't progressive, if it ain't Pan-Africanist, we don't need it.
So how can we deal with the legacy of self-hate in current and former British Caribbean?
Through the children. I would go back this comment. We can work with the adults, but let us be clear. When you study military science, what do most dictators or nations do when they come to power with their traitors? They incarcerate or they eliminate. I'm not a supporter of elimination. I've never had to harm another human being, not to that extent, and I hope to God I never will have to. But the reason when you study military history, the reason why great nations and empires, UK especially, America did it, China did it, all nations have done it. The reason they exterminate traitors to the cause is because they know that it would take probably the rest of that person's life to get them to see the light of why the country needs to be independent, why they need to do things a certain way. Psychologically, it is hard to change personality. Psychologically, it is hard to change belief. Psychologically, it is hard to change thought. Most countries do what? They simply incarcerate those who are guilty of treason. Because once a grown person, an adult, has made up their mind that they are not for a certain thing, nothing can change that. I'm a therapist. My job is to help people change. Most people who go to therapy do not change. This is a scientific fact. Ask any psychologist. What percentage of people who go to therapy actually come out better? How many come out having solved the problem they came to therapy for? Less than a quarter. Less than a quarter order. You understand? So I say that to say that we spend too much time focusing on adults. We shouldn't give up on people. Some of our people can be reached, but you have to understand the consciousness of self-hate, the psychological terrorism of white worship is so deep and entrenched in the African mind throughout the Caribbean, throughout Africa, throughout the world. Because this was a global thing. White supremacy was a global program. Okay? It is so entrenched that there's black people who would try to hurt you if you try to take away white Jesus. And when I say white Jesus, I want to clarify now, because I'm in country and I respect that. I'm not talking about your religious beliefs. I'm not talking about the Bible. Okay? You're talking about a descendant of Christian pastors. I have an uncle who's a pastor. I speak in churches all the time. I'm a friend of the church. I have a lot of friends who are ministers. I'm not talking about your religion. I'm talking about the images. The images that the slave masters brought to you when they brought you here. That's what I'm talking about. Black people have no business worshiping a deity that doesn't look like them. Your God should look like you. And if your God can't look like you, you should not have an image of a God. But every church you go in Turks and Caicos, every church you go in Jamaica, every church you go in Haiti, Brazil, St. Croix, every church in America, or should I say 99% of those churches, still have a white Jesus hanging up. So slavery is not over. The chains were taken off the body and now they've been put on the brain. Start with the children.
So what religion do you practice, and can you explain its principles?
Sure. Two answers to that. Number one, I will partake in the religion of any group of African people I happen to be around. I believe God is one, but I believe the pathways to supreme consciousness are many. So if I'm in church, I'm going to pray with my brothers and sisters in the church. I have no problem praying in the church with my Christian brothers and sisters as long as the Jesus is black. I will pray to a white Jesus. That's if I'm with my Muslim brothers, I'll go ahead and make salat in the masjid. If I'm with my African Methodist Episcopal brothers and sisters, if I'm with my Jehovah Witnesses, my Seventh-day Adventists, if I'm with my Buddhist brothers and sisters, I'll pray with them. So to me, God is one. So I am open to praying. I have a Bible in my bag. I just bought it, as a matter of fact. I read the Bible. I read the traditional African scripture. So my question is, I belong to all religions, and then I belong to no religion at the same time. That's the first answer. The second answer, primarily in the spiritual system of the Yoruba peoples of Nigeria, which is known as Ifa, I-F-A. Ifa is the deity of destiny. Ifa is that aspect of God, because there's only one God in African spirituality. One of the biggest pieces of information that we have been fed about our own native spirituality, which predates every single religion under the sun, is that we believe in multiple gods. We do not believe in multiple gods. African people believe in one God. That's where the Christians got one God from. It came from us. That's where the Muslims got it. The Hebrews, it came from us. African people created monotheism. Okay? So we believe that that one God manifests itself, okay, in an infinite amount of energies. So when you hear African people say God of the water, the energy in the water, we're not talking about a different God. We're talking about the same creator of the universe that manifests. When we talk about the God of agriculture, we're not talking about a different spiritual entity. We're talking about the one supreme ruler of the universe, the great I am, that manifests itself in agriculture. Because God is so great. God is so unfathomable. God is so incomprehensible. In African culture, we study and learn and try to master, get an elementary understanding of the one God by approaching and respecting and reverencing God through all the different manifestations, because none of us can truly understand God. None of us can truly comprehend God. Any preacher, any imam, any spiritual person who tells you I understand God don't know what they're talking about. The human mind is incapable of comprehending supreme consciousness. If I was to give you 5 basic differences between African spirituality and religion, I would say these are the differences. Number 1, religion, God is always masculine. In every major religion, God is always masculine because there's a hatred for the woman. The woman's divinity has been stripped from Christianity. The woman's divinity has been stripped from Islam. It's true. All Africans still have the feminine principle in our practice. God is referred to as a man in certain instances. God is referred to as a woman. So the first difference is African spirituality respects feminine divinity and masculine divinity. The world religions only respect masculine divinity. They do not respect feminine divinity. Number 2, the major religion, no place for ancestral veneration. African spirituality, ancestral veneration is key. We do not worship our ancestors. Can I say it again? We do not worship our ancestors. Can I say it one more time? We do not worship our ancestors. In the Bible, in the Quran, there is mention of intermediate spirits known as angels. You have the angel Gabriel, who is the messenger angel. You have the angel of death. You have Michael, Israfel, hundreds of angelic spiritual beings who serve as an intermediate power between God and man. Well, in African culture, guess what? Our intermediate powers are our ancestors. Our ancestors are our angels. We don't call on the angels of the Bible and the Quran. We call on great grandma. We call on great grandpa. Because in African spirituality, when you die, you don't die. The flesh dies, the spirit never dies. Bible got that from us too. The spirit never dies. That spirit clings to its family and is ordered by God to protect and look out for the best interests of that family. Your ancestors are committed to you. In fact, there's an African proverb that the ancestors sit at the feet of God, and whenever someone in the family has a problem, God sends your ancestors to help you. And if the ancestors are not successful, if you are worthy of a blessing, then supreme consciousness might intervene in your affairs. The third difference is we believe in divination. Divination means that you can get an answer to a spiritual or life issue. You don't have to wait till you die. We pray just like you pray, but then after we pray, we go to the priest, and our priest can do a divination. You have to be trained in this. This is This is an unbroken spiritual lineage that goes back millions of years, where you can ask a question. Before we get married, should I marry this woman? Should I relocate? So we believe in divination. We can get answers now. That's number 3. The fourth difference is you do not choose to be a priest. You must be called to be a priest. In the church and in the mosque, you can decide I want to be a preacher. Nothing's wrong with that. But in African spirituality, you don't decide. Your destiny, when you come into this world, your destiny must state that you are supposed to be a priest. Take me, for example.
How do you know?
You have to get a divination. So, for example, when you get your divination, first of all, no baby is born in African culture without a divination. This is something we lost through slavery. Soon when you come out, the mother, there's a divination to find out what name this child should carry. What is the reason this child is in this world? What does this child need to look out for? What does this child need to do? They even tell you certain foods you should eat, certain foods you should not eat, types of places you should live, types of women you should marry. This is how scientific spirituality is in the African world, which is why we say we don't believe in God. We know God. I don't believe in God. I don't need to believe. I experience God. Science. This ain't a religion. It's a science. You understand? So for us, you don't choose to be a priest. You have to be chosen by spirit. Take me. I've been chosen by spirit. My divination have revealed that I'm supposed to be a Babalawo, which means father of mysteries, keeper of the secrets. That is the priest in Ifa. And once I go through the proper initiation, I will be able to do divinations. And the beauty of this is you don't have to give up your religion. Your religion is a religion. This is not a religion. This is African spiritual culture. You are born with this in your DNA. So you can be a priest of the church and still be a priest of Ifa. They are not mutually exclusive. They can go together. Think about it. How many how many wars have ever been fought over African spirituality? 0. How many wars have been fought over Christianity? Thousands. How many wars have been fought over Islam? Thousands. Most people who have been killed in human history have been killed in the name of Jesus and Muhammad. How many have been killed in the name of African spirituality? None. Why? Because we believe in freedom of religion. Freedom. If you want to be a Christian, I respect that. You want to be a Muslim, I respect that. You a Hebrew, I respect that. Jehovah's Witness, I respect that. One of the reasons Marcus Garvey was so successful is because Marcus Garvey never chose any religion over any other. That's why Marcus Garvey built the law. He was a Christian himself. But Garvey said African people don't need another church. We need an organization that's going to help build us up and get us up off of our knees. Pan-Africanism respects all religions, but we will not choose one over the other.
Tell us about the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Leadership Academy, and also tell us, why do you have those two persons named?
Excellent question. The reason I chose to name the academy after Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey, firstly, because I'm a blood relative of Frederick Douglass, 4 times great-grand cousin and uncle, through my 4 times great-grandfather, Stephen Henry Bailey. If you ever read the autobiographies of Frederick Douglass, he talks about growing up on Tuckahoe Creek with cousin Stephen. Well, the same cousin Stephen that Frederick Douglass talks about in his autobiographies is Dr. Umar Johnson's 4 times great-grandfather. Okay? Frederick Douglass was the greatest black leader of the 19th century in America. Marcus Garvey was the black leader of 20th century America. Although ideologically they would have disagreed, right? Douglass was a radical integrationist. Marcus Garvey was a revolutionary Pan-Africanist. Why would you choose 2 great men who represent 2 opposite ends of the ideological spectrum? The same reason why Marcus Garvey named his first Black Star Line steamship the SS Frederick Douglass. Just because we may disagree philosophically doesn't mean that I respect you as a great leader. We have to get over this thing that I'm only going to work with you if you're a Christian. I'm only going to work with you if you're a Muslim. I'm only going to work with you if you're a Pan-Africanist. I'm only going to work with you if you're a socialist. I'm only going to work with you if you're an integrationist. I will work with any sincere black man and woman. But the reason I chose to name the school after those 2, because I believe that those 2 men, this example of unapologetically African alpha manhood in the respective centuries in which they lived. The Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy will be different from every other school in the world because, number one, it will teach African children African pride. I don't know of a school on the face of this earth that teaches African children African pride. My school will be based on international economics, which means we are not just about sending kids to college. They will be more than college ready. How to make a financial earning and living in their life right here, right now. By the time your child finishes their 14th year, they will be able to do their own taxes. By the time your child finishes their 15th year, they will have mastered real estate in their native homeland. By the time your child finishes the 16th year, they will be trading stock on Wall Street. By the time your child graduates, they will have a business plan that will stand up to the scrutiny of any financial lending institution. And I hope to God that the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy will have enough wealth, enough capital to be able to give our young men loans for their very first business. This is about economic empowerment. If we want to save African people, we have to teach our children the laws of money. The laws of money. We teach them the laws of religion and we let everybody else run away with the wealth. We got to get over that nonsense. God did not intend for Africans to be broke. God did not intend for Africans to be powerless. God did not intend for Africans to be dictated to by other people. God wants us to be a what? Representative of God. The Bible says what? I created you in my image. The Bible says God created us in God's image. God is power. God is authority. God is resourceful. God is abundant. And if God created us in God's image, we need power. We need authority. We need resources, and we need abundance. So the first curriculum is economic. Second curriculum will be political and military science. Our children will understand how white folks took over the world. Our children will understand how Chinese are about to take over the world. Our children will understand how Africans will need to take back the world. Because it is my firm belief that we are the only people who can run this world in a righteous and fair manner. Okay, no other race can treat every other race as an equal but us. We are the original humanitarians of the planet. That's why we are so religious. That's why we are so spiritual, because we are God's first people. We are God's first people. We are the chosen ones, and only the chosen ones can run this world in a way where white folks can be respected, Arabs can be respected, East Indians can be respected, European Jews can be respected, Chinese and others of the Asiatic continent can be respected. Only can bring back true humanity to this planet, and that's why we got to take the planet back. Okay, we got to get over this. We want to share. White folks don't share. Chinese don't share. Indians don't share. They own. I want our children to learn how to own. When do we get to own? I want power, not just participation. Okay, so then we will teach them military and political science. Why is AIDS the #1 killer of black women in middle age? Why are black men so unemployed? Why was Barack Obama made president? Why does a small country like England once control 90% of the world? They need to learn not just history, but how the world works. The third science, agricultural science. Our children will learn how to plant their own food, grow their own food. I'm tired of black people being dependent on other races in order to their family. We have to teach our children how to grow their own cucumbers, grow your own apples, teach them how to cook it. We're going to teach them how to prepare that food. We got to eat to live, not live to eat. 85% of black folks who die in this world are dying from what? Diseases related to what? Food intake. Food is being used as a weapon against African life. So at the FDMG Academy, we're going to teach agri-science. We're also going to teach dietary science. Rest in peace to Dr. Sebi from Honduras, one of our greatest master teachers on herbology and traditional African medicine. He was murdered last month, okay, while in Mexico. Just like Malcolm X's grandson was murdered in Mexico under similar circumstances. We want to teach our children how to heal the human body without Western pharmaceuticals. Yesterday, I went on a tour in South Caicos. That tour in South Caicos, we had a tour guide. Shout out to the brother. I didn't even catch his name. He, during the tour, drove by plants. And his brother told me how he is a herbologist. He can use these plants and help people cure different sicknesses and illness. I asked him, this was yesterday, I said, how many different herbal plants do y'all have here in Turks and Caicos? He said, we can't even name them. I said, hundreds? He said, over hundreds. Why aren't we teaching our kids the science of the herbs of Turks and Caicos? There's not a school on this island that is teaching the black children in Turks and Caicos how to use these herbs to cure the body. So when mom gets sick and dad gets sick and grandma gets sick, we take them to the doctor to get what? A prescription. Pills don't heal, pills kill. There was an article that came out in the Associated not too long ago that said most black people who die from medically related conditions don't die from the disease. They die from the medicine that they were given for the disease. Let me say that again. It wasn't the blood pressure that killed grandma. It was the pills they gave grandma for the blood pressure. It wasn't the heart disease that killed grandpa. It was the pills they gave grandpa. Why are children and why black folks in Turks and Caicos are not mastering all these different plants y'all have to cure all these different problems? That needs to be a curriculum. Why are we not teaching that to our children? But we will teach it at the Fred Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. In fact, I'm going to find that brother. I'm going to offer him a job. We're going to make that a whole curriculum. Every child will graduate knowing which herbs do what. When they build their first house, they're going to build a garden with nothing but herbs. Somebody got a stomach ache, we know how to handle that. Gangrene, we know how to handle. Depression, we know how to handle that. Cholesterol, we know how to handle that. Diabetes, we know how to handle that. That's what the new African child has to be able to do. And then we also going to teach spiritual science. Yes, they're going to learn ancestral veneration, divination. They're going to learn. They don't have to practice. If the parents don't want them to practice, I will respect that. but they will learn it because it's part of African history and culture. And then we will teach the science of the black family and black community. Every African boy will learn how to be a father. He will learn how to be a man. He will learn how to be a defender of his community. He will learn how to be a leader. The girls will learn the same. Because I don't think a woman's job is just in the kitchen. I don't think a woman's job is just having babies. As Pan-African nationalists, we believe black women are just as intelligent as black men. And yes, they should be given a place to lead. The women should be at the leadership table. Not just the kitchen table, not at the delivery table, but the leadership table. So after we open up the Fred Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, we will also be opening up the Anna Douglas and Amy Garvey Academy for the black girls. A revolutionary academy for a revolutionary time. If black people don't do something serious and significant soon, we will not survive the 21st century. AIDS, Ebola, West Nile, bird flu, swine flu, hunger, poor health care, poor food, poor diet. White racism is wiping black peoples off this planet. We need a paradigm shift. What got us through the 21st century will not get us through the 21st. We need Garveyism. We need revolutionary Pan-African nationalism. It's unify or die. Separate and you perish.
We hit our hour and that went kind of quick. But what's your final thoughts for the people of the TCI before you head off to Memphis?
I want to thank everybody. Headed to Memphis. I'm the keynote speaker for the Men of Color Conference, University of Memphis, tomorrow. This has been Men's Week, because it was the men's conference here, and coincidentally, and of course there are no coincidences, okay, it's Men of Color Conference in Memphis, so black men need some attention. We need enough attention. Sisters need attention too, don't get it twisted. I want to be clear on that, okay? There's a lot of issues of facing black women, domestic abuse, sexual abuse. Our sisters need our love too, and black men need to commit to black women. I want to be clear about that. No black man should ever marry a woman who ain't African, straight up. We got too many black women who are not being married, straight up. As Pan-Africanists, we do not approve or support of interracial marriage. We do not hate nobody. I respect the white woman. I hope she respects my two girls. But I want that black man to be with a black woman, because our kids need to see strong examples of black families. I just want to say thank you to everybody who came out, showed me love. I enjoyed it. The family in Grand Turk, the family in Provo, the family in South Caicos, North Caicos. I hope to get to the other 4 islands as well. Okay, I'm going to definitely look at building a Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy here. When I was in South Caicos yesterday, I just saw nothing but land. I mean, there's so much potential there in South Caicos. Maybe I could build the school right here. But y'all still a British colony, so I don't know if the Queen would have a problem with that. But nonetheless, if you want to help donate to the school, you can go to GoFundMe.com/Dr. Umar, GoFundMe.com/DRUMAR. If you need to reach me, you can go to my website, drumarjohnson.com, drumarjohnson.com. Phone number 215-989-9858. I repeat, 215-989-9858. I don't answer the phone, but I will text you back. You can add me on WhatsApp. Email address, drumarjohnson@yahoo.com. As I said, Miss Carolyn Dickinson will have copies of my book when they finally arrive, so you can get in contact with her to get a copy of Psychoacademic Holocaust, the Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys. Please, 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 brothers and sisters, stop putting your kids on these dangerous psychiatric meds. Do not give them the meds. Pills don't heal, pills kill. They don't need drugs, they need love. You understand that? Also, if any parents have any questions about their children, know that I have a free Black Parent Teleconference every Tuesday. You can call in every Tuesday, 7 to 9. Wait a minute, it's 6 to 8 East Coast, so it'll be 7 to 9 your time, I believe. Every Tuesday, you can ask me any questions, education, or mental health about your children. If information about the upcoming Black College and Consciousness Tour for 11 to 17-year-olds. I will be hosting that in America for 11 to 17-year-olds. I would love to have some little brothers and sisters from Turks and Caicos on my next college tour, the first 2 weeks, July 2017. But other than that, I appreciate the island for the invitation. I appreciate all the men and women I met during this whole week that I was here. I enjoyed it, and I look forward to coming back. One God, one aim, one Africa. One God, one people, one Africa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Umar, and persons listening in. This was a very special edition of the Patriot Hour. We booked this time just to make it Dr. Umar available to speak again, because he gave such a powerful presentation both to the general audience with the kids on Tuesday, as well as the separate session just for the men that were at the International Men's Day conference on Tuesday here in Providenciales. So we definitely had to make this happen, and I hopefully persons out there listening in Radio Land or watching on Facebook with the Tropical Vibes. Hope you enjoyed this hour, and of course you can always go back and review it again. If there's things you didn't catch the first time around, you could always rewatch the show and, you know, get some more information. But it's great. Again, thanks Dr. Umar for taking the time before you head to Memphis. And again, enjoy your weekend. This was the Patriot Hour. Take care.
The views and opinions expressed in this special program are not the views or opinions of Tropical Vibes 105.5 FM.